Happy New Year. Welcome back into the Horseshoe Lounge at Roosters. This is a fun, casual joint, and we are going to try and have a fun, casual conversation for the first time in 2024. That is Justin Zwick, Bobby Carpenter, Nicole Cox. I am Austin Ward, and unfortunately...
It's like going to a will reading, Austin.
How
much fun is that?
It's not the most fun you can have to look back at the end of 2023, which did not end the way anybody at Ohio State expected. Have there been enough days?
I thought the bowl games didn't matter.
Well, they don't.
Until you lose them.
They don't. I'm not trying to have it both ways. So you tell me how to feel about it, Bob.
I don't know.
I think I knew that the outcome wasn't going to change anything. And it's not that Ohio State lost, so now I'm overreacting to a setback. I'm reacting to what it looked like, which I was baffled by.
So that's okay. So the results, I don't know.
That's different than the results, right? Yeah, just how it looked.
How you got to that point. You know, the movie was going to end, and you knew it wasn't going to have the ending that you wanted. You were watching Titanic, but how did it get there?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, did you leave Jack in the water? Did you try to make room for him on the raft, or did you just let him freeze to death and die in the water? I mean, I think there was room on that little piece of wood for both of them. You watched him. You have to stare out there. And then
I could scoot over, but I'm not going to.
See, nope, you're good. I'm going to live. You die.
Thanks for that drawing.
And we'll be good. But I'm just trying to figure that out because as I'm watching this, I was like, hey, you know what? This offense looks rough. And I'm thinking if we could make a field goal excess of 40 yards, it's like 6-0. I'm like, can we get to 9? Because I go, if we can
we can hold them to one.
We're kicking that field goal. I'm like, if we make this one, you can find a way to manufacture some yards and get to. I felt a lot like what we did when we were playing, Justin. Like if we can find a way,
just need something.
If we could just get to, if we can get
double digits, baby.
If we
just
can cross the 35-yard line, then we'll have a chance at a field goal. You get to 9, that gives you room for one touchdown to give up. And like maybe a field goal, and like maybe 2 field goals, like you feel like you're in a good spot. And Elias, you missed the field goal. Eventually, the dam breaks for the defense. They give up the 95-yard drive. You come back. You have a little bit of a drive on offense, but nothing of substance. So then you're throwing that defense out there one more time. Who've been playing really well against. Yeah. I don't think people realize like how physical and tough that Missouri front was. That is the best the front seven I think has played in quite some time, like all year.
That was a tremendous performance.
If they would have played like that against Michigan, I think that they win that game.
I'm so glad you said that, guys. I think that needs to be taken into consideration that Missouri was a good team. They weren't terrible. They were having one of the best years they've had in forever. Right. So we need to remember that. It's not like they were just terrible but we played. Yeah, you're right. The front seven played incredible.
Even the backs, like Denzel Burke made great plays. Hancock, like all the guys, they were all making plays. Proctor did. Like those guys played well. I think there's some tweaks and adjustments that probably need to be made next year, personnel wise, as far as maybe where people are allocated. I'd like to see Sonny probably playing linebacker next year. That's got to be his position relative to what they need and what he can physically do. But defensively, I felt good. Offensively, everybody was upset at the quarterback, and I'm like, the more I watched, I was like, I'm not sure exactly what you want this guy to do, and so there's a little bit of like, okay, offensive line wasn't blocking very well. Why didn't you do other things? And the only problem with that is, and they need to try something. I will say that 100%. But you have a guy who has never really played, and so it's not like you have your full complement of answers,
right?
It's not like you can go deep in the cookbook over here, Rachel Ray, and find you something like, hey, we can get in this formation, run this protection, because he's maybe never done that before.
Yeah.
And you have a guy playing center who hadn't really played center a whole lot. And yes, so you got a lot of what you saw, which Travion played well. Like I thought there was
first quarter. It looked like I was telling Austin beforehand, like, you wanted everybody to ball out, but you didn't want him to ball out so much where they're come out of here. So it's like that first quarter, I was like, man, if Trey keeps this up. I mean, he was looking pretty strong, running through some tackles.
Fast, explosive.
Yeah, looked great. And then it didn't keep up, unfortunately. And the offense just had no answers. And, it sucks for Devin Brown going down. I mean, I've been there before.
That was terrible.
The one game, you don't have to worry about anything. Boom, he gets hurt in the first quarter. I tore my hamstring in the first quarter. And then it stinks that you have to go through something like that.
Well, Bob, you said, try other things. And when Travion was at his most explosive and popped a couple runs, they put in Tegra Shabola as an extra offensive lineman. They put in Caden McDonald in as a fullback. he popped 11, 13 that first time. I think they only did it twice. And it was like, nah, we're good with that.
Yeah. That's at that point.
Ran those.
I'm like, what? Like, that was a nice wrinkle.
We got that on film. We're good.
At that point, like you said,
that could have been the entire offense.
Let's line up and do it. What is wrong with doing what Michigan did against Penn State? We can try to run it 30 times.
Oh.
I mean, what do you have to lose? You're at least burning clock. You know what I'm saying?
Let your defense rest.
Yeah. Hey, you crack one, get a first down.
Burn the play clock, keep out there. And
you run it enough. Eventually, there will be like a little play action. You throw it to a guy in the flat. I mean, there would.
But they opted for having their freshman quarterback throw off his back foot for the first 5 or 6 throws.
Yeah, I can't believe that didn't work. It's weird because
it sounds me because I
mean, talk about not having a package for him. In my head, you had to have a package for Lincoln Kleinholz in this game.
Yeah.
You had a beat up quarterback who's starting his first game ever. You knew we were going to try and run around and use his athleticism that we've heard about.
Yeah.
How do you not say, what if something goes wrong? We did it in the Alamo Bowl. What if Justin goes down? Who played quarterback? Teddy. And we had a package for Teddy to go in there, and we actually had to do
it. More like a stalking.
Well, we were because Todd Beckman was a gray shirt. I was the only quarterback.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's what they were acting like. Yeah. Oh, we can't do anything now.
It was wild. I mean, we knew going into that. You got to have a backup plan, and it actually did happen, and we had to use it.
Pair and a spare.
I mean, now, granted, Lincoln is not Teddy, so you can't just say run around and do what you got to do.
But he actually plays quarterbacks. So
I know, so it should be better, you would think.
Nicole, are you feeling much better about the game now that it's removed, or optimistic for 2024?
I'm interested to see what 2024 is going to look like. I think that, like you were saying, the quarterbacks, we had 2 guys that had never, Devin had never started, had he?
No.
Yeah, and he was coming off the injury and then got injured again, which obviously mentally you're going to be nervous about that. And it happened. And it just, I don't know.
What were you thinking on Friday night in the stadium? How was your viewing experience?
I love Josh Proctor for trying to get the crowd pumped up all the time. Yeah. He had just, his enthusiasm, I think, is something that is great for the team.
Yeah, it's going to be missed.
Yeah, absolutely. And Travion, I thought he played phenomenal. That's actually what I had written down, just his plays. He looked great. And Jack Sawyer, too. I thought he looked wonderful. He had some awesome plays.
That was Jack's best game as a Buckeye.
He looked
not even close.
Yeah, he looked great. Do we know if he's coming back?
He has not made a public decision. He has indicated that he's likely to return. That is the expectation.
Which would be great to have his leadership.
He's the guy that's most in that Jay-Z bucket. It's like, hey, just calm down a little bit. You're making too much money right now. Mm-hmm. And he was, that was a very good, to your point earlier, Nicole, about Missouri's talent. They gave up 1.7 sacks per game, Missouri, over the course of the year. They were 3,
didn't he?
Yeah. Jack had 3 by himself. So he was dominating, and that wasn't against some paper tiger. That was a real deal. So
he looked great, which was exciting to see. And I just think if we could have kept that going through the game, it would have been great. I also think I've been thinking a lot about the standard is the standard.
Okay.
And
let's get into it.
And just the vibes from Missouri on how excited they were to be there because they hadn't been to a bowl game in so long. And that's just not what their team is. That they were like little kids, just like, we're here to win because we're so excited. But at the same time, they were like, we're just here. We're just happy to be here. And I think that the standard is the standard has gotten so high for Ohio State that we're forgetting to enjoy the small games and we're taking the smaller games for granted. Mm-hmm. And that's not the team's fault. That's just this standard is the standard that has been created by fans and everyone on the expectations of Ohio State. And I get it. Like, you want to have high standards. Just like here, like, we expect people to be kind and great to the guests, but we also try to make sure we show them appreciation on the little things, And I know that's just so minuscule in the grand scheme of things, but I think if the guys aren't having any chances to enjoy things, it's hard to perform at your best when you're not feeling any joy. I don't know if that makes sense, but I just feel like you can just see it in, just the way we felt about going to the Cotton Bowl. And when I say the way we felt, it was just kind of what the media was saying of just like, we should be in a CFP, we should be in a playoff game. We should be going to the national championship. It's like, hey, we're in a bowl game. Let's be excited. That's just where we are right now. So let's be excited about that, because if we're just bummed about not being in a playoff game, we could lose this bowl game, which ended up happening.
Yeah, I think and you can lose games. That happens. I'm not trying to hold Ohio State to a standard that they have to win every single game that they play every time, no matter what, and it has to look perfect. And I said at the start of December, treat it as an exhibition. Like, it doesn't matter. I'm not trying to have it both ways, but Ohio State is the one that sets the standard for itself. And if they say, well, we don't believe this is an exhibition, and we're offended that you say that we shouldn't be trying to win this game, or that we're not going to win this game, and that they're taking it seriously and want to have a springboard for 2024, well, that was not my choice for them. That was their choice. And so if that's the expectation that they put on themselves for that game and then performed like that, well, then I have to evaluate it accordingly. And I don't think that they looked prepared to play.
Is that as a team? Because defensively, I felt like they looked prepared to play.
Well, I feel like you heard more defensive players talking about, no, this is a big game here. We're going to come out and do.
And that's fair. Yeah. They were the ones that were actually the same version from the rest of the season for the most part. You didn't have Lathan Ransom there at the end. You didn't have Tommy Eichenberg, but everybody else, Jack and JT, both opt into that situation. You have Denzel playing out of his mind as well. Like that there was carryover for them, and they played very well. And the offense was clearly different. The starting quarterback wasn't there. Julian Fleming wasn't there. Chip Trainum wasn't there. They made changes on the offensive line, so I can understand it.
I don't know if you can understand it. It looked pretty ugly on the offensive side of the ball.
Justifications for it.
It seems like there's a void of leadership on the offensive side.
Well, if you take a senior, Iron Buckeye and Julian Fleming out of the lineup. Marvin Harrison Jr. obviously not playing. That's a big deal.
That is a big deal.
The guy the quarterback who started all 12 games. I mean, that's going to be different. Devin spent the whole month with everybody talking about his leadership and the energy he brought, but then you remove that from the equation. Who else was there to do it? Matthew Jones got to move to center for that. He's the most veteran presence. I've probably heard him say 10 total words in 6 years at Ohio State. So I don't know, Bob. I mean, that's
what it just seemed like. There wasn't that same level of leadership. And like I said, when you lose your quarterback, you lose Chip Trainum, you lose Julian Fleming, Marvin's not playing. Like there obviously is that void there that.
Now we did see number 8 try and bring some of that.
Yeah, Cade, I thought, you know what, he had a lot of fire, but I think he was on a little bit of a pitch count too with what he could do. With his knee still bothering him and everything. It felt like he brought a lot of energy. I talked to Dusty Dvorak, who called the game for about 45 minutes afterwards, just trying to figure out exactly what was going on and what he was seeing, what I saw, and everything else. It just didn't seem like there was that passion or fire. And I don't know where that derives from on the offensive side. And not having your quarterback is part of it, but I think it's not like Kyle was the most fiery guy either.
Sure, yeah.
Devin maybe a little more so, but it wasn't like he had been huge in that role. So I'm just looking like, is there
who was the guy the rest of the year that we leaned on in those situations? Was it a Chip Trainum? Or was it Mayan? Was it one of those guys that wasn't there, for this game? But
I think it was largely just relying on the excellence of Marvin Harrison.
Well, there's that.
There is that. That was a major piece missing. I'm glad you guys brought that up. I do think that piece had a lot to do with it as well.
But I don't feel like we tried to replace or do anything with any of our other 5-star guys who,
they took one deep shot down the field, and it wasn't a bad ball from Lincoln Keenholz. Shaden Ballard had a chance to make
had a chance to go make a play on it.
I think we're all sitting there thinking, like, well, if that's 18, that's probably a catch. I mean, that's.
But why not? Why not try and I know, granted, when you have 2 seconds to throw the ball or you're getting the snap and you have 2 guys running down your throat, it's not easy to play quarterback. Or that's why he was throwing off his back foot, because you're getting that pressure and it's going to come, or you're at least figuring it's going to come with the way the game was going.
Yeah, but.
Even with that, they did a great job all year long of getting Marvin in spots where you could get him the ball, and I don't feel like we did anything like that. Yeah. And it's just the offense, the play calling wasn't. I don't feel like it was very good. I feel like we should have went and pounded. As soon as Lincoln goes in that game, hey, offensive line, this is on you now.
Yeah.
and everybody's going to see it one way or the other, but we're going to let you try and run block instead of have you on an island trying to pass block, because we saw how that went in the first few series.
Yeah.
We're putting our hands in the ground, we're coming after them, and we didn't do that.
And Missouri's good up front defensively, but it felt like we were doing a much better job run blocking in close quarter situations.
It's typically easier for these offensive linemen, especially when they're not sure or they're just been together for however 6 practices or whatever it was, banging on each other or with each other. They weren't prepared to play, and they didn't know exactly what was going on.
On each other, with each other.
It's putting you to the test to start 2024.
On each other, with each other. I mean,
on or around.
It's all in game. So you mentioned the 6 practices. Someone brought that up to me on X, social media.
Well, you see that online.
On the X?
Yeah, on the X. Like, is the 6 practices...
The way I read it was like 6 hard practices, and others were lighter workouts, maybe.
Just trying to figure out where that number was.
It was.
Now you can't believe everything you read.
It was suggested by Carson Hinsman on his ill-timed podcast appearance in Wisconsin that practices had not been as rugged and physical as they were a year ago, which
we had more
also
time.
Seems obvious because one is a playoff game and the other is the Cotton Bowl.
Correct.
And you had more days to fit more practices in.
Do we
and 14 players, as Berm said over there, were already in the transfer portal, so the options were limited. You had plus Marvin, plus maybe some other guys taking a little bit like you had 75% of your roster or less. You can't just go.
And you also played on the 29th. Like when you play on the first, then you have more days in there to give guys more rest.
And fewer days and fewer players doesn't mean more physical practice. That equation doesn't work.
The practices I saw, they didn't seem like it was light Club Med jog throughs. Like it wasn't Shady Acres out there, just dudes hanging out, cruising around. I mean, this was real. Like they were practicing to win, and there was an intensity about it. And they built that thing up and had like a crescendo of like 2 or 3 really good ones before they left, and then you go into like your game week when you get down there on the bowl site. What are you supposed to be? When they play Friday, like Wednesday out there, just dudes smashing on dudes like Jay-Z's talking about.
Well, when your offensive line's not that good, you might need to bang a little bit more.
I also think, guys, do you think that they'll ever change that the transfer portal won't open up until after the bowl game?
Unfortunately.
Why is it before the bowl game? Because I think that needs to be taken into consideration too, that you're losing guys.
Well, you're juggling so much as a head coach or as a coaching staff at that point.
It's not even the coaches, it's the academic calendar at that point.
You have to be in school enrolled in January, so you have to
Got it.
Unless they start to treat it completely differently, which
they may.
Theoretically, they could. They
Everything
could say,
else is different.
You can go to your new school and participate in workouts and go through spring ball without participating in class. Like you can take a semester off.
You don't have to go to. You just participate in class. You don't have to be.
But again, like that's the hang up is all these things that are involved that have made
that school
December
thing. Nicole
ridiculous.
just drags it all down.
I just feel like that can be figured out. Whether break is moved a little bit. I mean, we've seen break go, like Miami doesn't go back till January 19th or something. Well,
they could also push the calendar forward a little bit.
They could do whatever they wanted. I mean, that's in the end of the day, but
because I think it should be able to finish out a season, and that's why we do need to consider that with the loss of just how many people we had in the portal.
And that's it. I mean, the conversation for athletic directors and football coaches is, let's do this. Can you make some concessions for us? Like our sport has changed dramatically. It's not going to hurt anything. They can catch up because they can get in, start in May and do summer sessions. But then you're talking about school presidents and we're not going to change the academic calendar or make exceptions for these people because they're 0.001% of the student body.
Here's the irony. This is the big thing that nobody talks about. You can add a class 3 weeks in. I want to tell people that. You can enroll and then get into classes up until usually 3 weeks into the semester.
Well, the old ad drop date.
Because we switch classes.
Yes, you have your ad drop. So, if you can add a class at that point and drop, by definition, you are getting into a new class. So, you missed the first couple of weeks.
Catch up on it.
What did I miss?
It's all online. You can read about it.
Here's the material. Yeah. Let's go through it and figure out. There are ways around it, Nicole. They just tell you, classes start. I mean, that's why the year after, what was it, the 06 Fiesta Bowl, your senior year, they had to fly back the night after the game because we have school tomorrow and we have to be there.
So
like
flying out at 1 o'clock in the morning
for syllabus day. Like no one even goes anyway.
You better be there because they're checking.
Oh, check these, man! Like this is
that's a lot. That's a lot.
For
For sure.
2024 is off to a great start.
It will be, guys.
Rodgers in the portal. I mean,
we'll get to that.
The meerkat in the portal. I mean,
hey, does anybody look at it like this? Like,
this is
not how we wanted it to end.
And you got to go somewhere else.
It's not. It's not how we wanted it to end.
Everything ends badly, or else it wouldn't end.
And who knows? It may get a little bit worse. But
what? What do you say?
Oh man! I almost spit out my water.
Guess what I'm doing?
I thought it was.
She's looking at the quarterback room saying, "This is going to be bad next year."
No. I'm moving the standard so we can get the standard to a point that people start being excited and actually
just happy when we win it.
Yes,
every other game.
We need to be at that point, guys. I just
don't know if we're that low yet, Nicole.
I agree with you. I don't want to go lower, but I just feel things will be different when people can just start. I just feel like it's so critical every time we lose a game or anything we do, and it's becoming unenjoyable for people. And I just think it would be great to get to a point where we're just like the Missouri fans were. I mean, you would have. No, I mean, you know what I mean.
That's
like just
be Purdue, Austin.
That genuine. You guys remember when Dayton Flyers in the basketball when they went to like the Elite Eight, and every time they won a game, it was just like, oh my goodness. We just can't believe we're even here. You know, like they just were over the moon, genuinely excited. And it would just be neat for that to happen again, or for us to feel excited.
Feel emotions.
Just feel good emotions. Just to have that positive energy around. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I just, and there's a lot of change going on. Think about every team. Every team is going to go through phases. It's like, it's just how it is, and it stinks when you're not in a good phase. But I do think it leads to
remember when Obi
Toppin,
what did he break his foot and then was done, and then they couldn't play, and they were not the number 1 seed and got knocked out of the tournament. I thought that's where you're going with the Dayton story. Like that's where we were supposed to feel.
Yeah, well, you know what I'm saying. I mean, Bobby, don't you agree? Don't you agree that
I like to be
the expectations of the fan base are out of control, where you can't win a game and be happy that, hey, we won this game, it's great, or hey, we lost a tough game, that stinks, but hey, we still support the team and we still love.
I feel like expectations have gotten out of control.
Here's the reality: people are saying Nick Saban should retire because of how they handled the game last night. I mean, like that, and this dude has won 6 national championships.
Yep.
There's people saying
earlier in the years, like they should fire Nick Saban because this team is so bad, and then it was one of his best coaching jobs ever. And then what are we doing? Night, it was terrible.
We're running quarterback power
it right now. What?
Like it's just
they had no answers.
I mean, that's the way it is everywhere.
I get it.
Like I say it everywhere. That's the way it is at probably like the top
at the top
5.
If you want to be teams in college, be there.
There's not a lot of room. It's like trying to sit like 8 people in a love seat. Like people are getting knocked to the floor. Like there's not a lot of room.
Do you guys still feel we're at the top though? I still feel like we're a top team.
Well, the roster is one of the top 3 in the sport. I don't think that's an issue. I think that there are parts of the program that are not being maximized. But it is still the envy of 99%.
I watched those games. I watched the entirety of both of the games yesterday. I feel like if you could have plugged in Ohio State, Georgia, or Oregon into any of those games, they would have looked about the same.
Mm-hmm.
Score-wise, like maybe the scores are higher or lower based upon matchups, but I felt like there was probably about 6 or 7 really good teams this year in college football, and it was just going to come down to a function of who made plays at the end of games to be able to win.
And we saw that.
That's what it was.
So we saw
I agree with you.
The 1 seed play Ohio State in a road environment for the Buckeyes, and it came down to one play.
One play.
I mean, they are that close. They are at the pinnacle of the sport. That's what makes
it just feels so different because a lot of those guys are gone and different. It's different now.
But that's also part of it. I mean, we don't have to. We'll get into that in the second part of the show. But I'm trying to just get over the fact that Nicole said she's interested for this offseason was the word she chose, and that it could get worse.
I don't like that.
No, I didn't.
Like that second part.
Let's rephrase that. I just was trying to say,
I know what you're saying.
I'm just trying to rearrange the standard just a little bit, just so that we can exceed the standard.
Jedi mind trick over here.
We can just exceed the standard.
People to enjoy their lives more and not get so upset.
And for these kids to enjoy it too, for these players.
It didn't look like Kyle enjoyed much of his season
after
every game.
And he was phenomenal.
Let's not go that far.
Let's not go that far.
He was good.
He was
great for a first-year quarterback. And you're right. I feel like the pressure was just so much that we looked past the great things that he did for his first year.
So we're going into 2024 with a greater sense of appreciation.
I would love you guys. Now that would make me so happy. That is exactly what I'm trying to say.
Let's see what happens when Berm gets on the show in the second half.
Berm usually has my side on certain things.
We might need to get you a time machine, Nicole, to 1950, where you'd be really happy every day and just
back to 2002 when people were just happy that we were winning. It didn't matter if it was by
there was
3
no
or
social media venue
defensive touchdown,
and then we won a national championship because we were all so grateful for every win we made.
There you go.
I'm telling you,
it's impossible. It's impossible
to
be grateful and unhappy at the same time. Jim Tressel had that somewhere. I don't know who said it, but that was in there.
It was in the winner's
manual.
All right,
Manuel.
Well, that's well said, Nicole. Thank you. Anything going on at Roosters this week? You can use your gift cards now.
Yes, you can use your bonus bucks now, and we're just happy to be back. Yesterday was really busy with all of the games.
You know what?
So thank you to everybody who came out.
It's an appetizer threes day,
and today actually is appetizer threes day.
And it's very appropriate. Like starting the year with you're throwing your ace at the beginning.
You do.
The Mott sticks.
They're
delicious.
Let it out 24 is going to go.
Cheesy, golden brown. They've got the marinara dipping sauce. $3 all day long. So you're coming out strong. Today, the first Tuesday of 2024.
Let's go.
I'll have to look at the calendar because we have a leap year in here, so you may get an extra Tuesday.
An extra appetizer Tuesday this year?
Let's go. Oh, she hadn't thought about that yet.
Yeah.
Now she's worried
I was thinking about the beer.
Panic sets in.
No, it's not. It's not an extra.
Someone corrected me when I did today on history. I was like, 364 days left. They're like 65.
We have 5 appetizer Tuesdays in January, which is awesome.
There we go.
Yep.
There you go.
Coming out strong. All
right.
Hey,
you get the December 31st. Also a Tuesday.
Oh,
ooh, I like it.
You get the extra appetizer Tuesday.
We'll have to see what our hours are on that New Year's Eve. Because we change them every year.
We'll plan ahead.
I'm not going to ask you for 12 months in advance.
What do you think the time is, Nicole? When can people come pick those up on the 31st?
Never know. Sometimes I'm going to put her on the spot for those. Plan ahead.
I should
just
know
to
that.
see how much planning Nicole is actually doing. All right. She's going to go do a lot more of that, get back to work, and we're going to carry on. Berm's going to be in here as we talk. At Roosters in the Horseshoe Lounge, it's a fun, casual joint.
Roosters has been so fortunate. We just want to be able to give some of that back to the community.
They donate to organizations that are near and dear to their heart, and we're so fortunate to have been with Roosters now for a long time.
They always go above and beyond to help support our foundation to further help veterans.
It's just a wonderful feeling to know that Roosters supports the Buckeye Cruise for Cancer.
All the folks at Roosters are just genuinely kind folks, and they want to make a difference.
Thank you, Roosters Foundation.
Thank you, Roosters.
Thank you, Roosters.
Thank you, Roosters Foundation.
Welcome back into the Horseshoe Lounge at Roosters. Happy 2024, Berm.
Hey, Berm. Hey.
Positive Berm.
Welcome to the new year. Let's go.
You got some positivity for us?
I have one question that I want to dive into.
Let's go.
One burning question.
And I know this is going to be viewed in a negative way, and it's really not. Michigan played a great game on what day was it?
Last night.
Monday?
Monday.
Played a great – I mean, they didn't play a great game. They played well enough to win. But it brings up my point. Is Alabama the 5th best team in the SEC? I mean, this is not Georgia,
Texas.
Well, I mean, no,
they're not
current. Georgia, LSU, Ole Miss, Missouri. I think would all beat Alabama.
Well, they beat LSU.
I don't care. They knocked Georgia. They knocked out
Jaden. Oh, believe me, it was tight. It was a one possession game when Daniels went out.
I know that they beat Georgia. I get it. Okay, but
they also played Ole Miss.
Yeah.
Did they beat them?
Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
They beat Ole Miss pretty good.
Did you watch that game? Like, how?
They look different in that game than they did at the end of the year.
It's just some weird sorcery that Saban has over people, I guess. Because I realize they beat all the teams, but they aren't better than them, right?
Like, not this year, they're not. I would say part of it is a little styles make fights. And where Bama's always been so good up front, Michigan was better than them. Mm-hmm. You know, and they were able to pound. Because it wasn't like Michigan played. I thought Michigan would have to play a near flawless game.
Yeah,
they'd have to play like they did against Ohio State. If they played like that against Ohio State, I think Ohio State wins. I mean, they fumbled a punt like right there on the 40. They gave
Imagine
them the
after all that, right? So they come back, they tie it, and then they were this close to losing on a safety on a botched punt by bringing in
my God,
a different punt returner. I was like, what are you doing? Anyway.
You want to talk about special?
Maybe we should just restart this.
They yanked the kick. Believe me, I watched it. I was like, I'm looking at this like, well, I'm seeing this and I'm like, I think Ohio State's probably about as good as both these. I think the same as I did earlier.
I think that's what's extending the misery to get it back onto
really
the conversation.
Does.
I
think
Ohio
that's
State.
what makes
Michigan is now one game away from a national
but
championship.
The good news is Washington, and I said this, I go, Texas is a better team. Washington, I'm not betting against them. Michael Penix Jr., that left-handed wizard.
He's something.
He has the ability to conjure sorcery.
He played in
because Kalen DeBoer, Kalen DeBoer, I didn't realize this. He models some of his coaching decisions late game, like obviously after Mike McCarthy, where we're going to choose to throw the ball late and do things instead of trying to just. I appreciate the fact that they're really good on offense.
Foot on the gas pedal, Bob.
At some point,
Texas did not try to blitz him at all.
Game would have been over.
And I know they were just dropping back in zone because you couldn't match up with their wide receivers man-to-man, and so you're trying to just – but, like, you weren't matching up with their wide receivers in the zone either.
I'm with you. But
you got to get
Washington is a team of destiny, and I'm going to hang on.
I think the problem is that Michigan feels pretty strongly that they are.
That doesn't matter.
And we live in a society where being a bunch of cheater-ass cheaters gets rewarded, so that's the way it works.
That's the other side of this
But hey,
thing.
kudos to Jim Harbaugh for winning a playoff game. They
also Sherrod Moore. People can talk trash. They call a good game.
This is the problem that if we're going to dive into the Ohio State conundrum here, it's that there is a fundamental lack of aggression in the Ohio State football program, and I don't want that to be confused with me saying the Ohio State's soft. They're not soft.
I watched them destroy their defensive front, manhandle Missouri.
It's such a lazy, stupid, way to boil everything down into one word. It's not that. There is a lack of aggression. The play calling. If you watched both those playoff games yesterday, all four of those teams were trying a lot of different things. Ohio State is
flicker on the 30-yard line.
Ohio State is so predictable and so base in everything they do. And by base, I mean just what I mean.
Basic. Base.
They're basic. They just don't. And I don't know when that started or why it started, but it seems like Ryan Day
it
wasn't that way in 2019,
and it wasn't like that
in 2020 or 2021.
Yeah.
So I don't know why it shifted, but there is just a lack of a willingness to say, hey, watch freaking Ryan Grubb at Washington. Watch the way he calls the game. Watch the way Sherrod Moore calls the game. Something has to change in the way that Ohio State's philosophy is. Even on defense, defense played great, but
didn't blitz.
They don't blitz.
No. They did a couple times. Got sacks.
Missouri
but we spent
the
entire previous year being like, hey, why does Jim Knowles blitz so much? And then he adjusted, and they became the number 2 scoring defense in the country. Let's set that one aside.
It's like Larry Johnson, though. It's like, okay, last year you rotated way too much. This year you rotate way too little. Can we just get your porridge to taste right, please? You have all the ingredients. Right. You have the ingredients.
I'm with you. I get it. It doesn't seem logical. I had somebody. I was deep into X on Friday night.
It's a dangerous place to be.
It really was. I mean, if I was in I wasn't really drinking because I was sick. I had strep throat, so I was not consuming large quantities of alcohol.
Just
actually helps.
Just moderate
strep throat.
Just a little. I had a hot toddy. I had a hot toddy.
Yeah.
I had a hot toddy. That is true. But someone was like, if Ryan would only call crossing routes like Urban did back in 2018 against Michigan, you do realize he was the offensive coordinator for that game, right? He was the one that called all of this. We don't run any crossers. Ryan called those. That was him. I don't know. But I said this because AJ was
Michigan's final touchdown in regulation, like that play right there to Roman Wilson, is a prime example of just something that Ohio State would have done 3 years ago, and they just don't do it.
They did it against. Remember Ryan? They got bogged down in 2019 against Clemson in the red zone. Mm-hmm. So then you saw the next year they play them, dude. Ryan had a whole bag of tricks in the red. They got down there, tight ends cross, this and that. I mean, they had all kinds of stuff. Like, man, this guy looks at things, solves problems.
But they also don't go 5 wide. You also don't see him doing things that just.
How could they have gone 5 wide with that offensive line?
I'm fine force them to spread out, and then you have a hot route.
And there's getting it out, getting the ball. There's some different things. Catch it, get it out. I don't
mind that at all.
Do some different things.
Tell your quarterback, this is where your pressure is. He comes, you replace him with a receiver.
Okay. But like you look at Michigan, not to go too far, it's like they're doing what they're gonna do, but we're going to have to manufacture some big hits. And I looked at what they did against Ohio State. Coming out in the second half, Alex Orji, boom, go get 25 yards. That was a chunk play. Halfback pass, Donovan Edwards. Like, I told AJ, he was doing this show with McAfee, and I go, this is what they're going to do. They're going to find a way to get Orji on there, and he wasn't as effective. He had like a 6-yard run. Mm-hmm. They'll throw – J.J. McCarthy's an athletic dude. They're going to throw a throwback to him. There's no doubt in my mind. It was maybe one of the greatest catches in the game I've ever seen. And it was amazing how it all worked out. But I'm like, they're going to have to manufacture because they can't just rely. Now, granted, they made some plays where they beat guys, but their guys aren't typically good enough to just go out there and beat you one-on-one. They're going to manufacture those situations. And it leads you to believe, to your point, Bern, like, is there that opportunity here?
Right. If you have players that are good enough to beat people one-on-one, that's great. But guess what? If you actually manufacture stuff for those guys, the result should be exponentially even better, you'd think.
That's why I just cannot, and we said this on Friday night when we left AT&T Stadium, that I did not put that loss on the players. I thought, like, yes, the offensive line did not play well. They shuffled the personnel. I think even that decision, goes back to the coaching staff. Like, I know, Bob, that we don't just like to sit here and talk about people's livelihoods and take it away from them.
Well, it's truth,
but they're like, something needs to be changed. When you're calling it aggression, it can be play calling, it can be anything. The whole offseason, like, Ryan Day has not been aggressive enough with his own staff, with the management of the personnel, any of that. I think it all builds up to what you see on those Saturdays. They were one play short, so we could have, again, been talking about something very different if one thing is different in Ann Arbor.
But once you're short one thing over and over again, then it's your responsibility to fix
and that's the point. I think what happened, and the reason that they were in position to be one play short, was a culmination of special teams errors and maybe lack of development from start to finish at quarterback, or issues in the second half with the defensive line and not being able to get off the field. Those are bills that have become due that could have been addressed 2 years prior.
Got to pay the boatman.
You have to pay up.
Got to pay the troll toll.
When the rent is due, it needs to be paid.
Put the coins on the eyes. Pay the boatman.
Anyway, that's how I feel.
It's a really difficult conversation because there are so many things that have to change. But as you guys were talking about in the first set, like, you could have put a full-strength Ohio State with Kyle McCord into any one of those games yesterday, and they would have belonged. They would have belonged, and they could have won. And so, like, you can look at it, you should look at it objectively and realize they're not far away, but it feels like to most people that the gap is growing almost daily. And I don't know
their numbers are increasing daily.
It's how it feels. Yeah, it's like, those stupid iPhone games where, like, they show, like, the advertisement, and, like, it's like your little guy is running, and then there's a sign that says +2, and then your guy multiplies, and then you shoot people, and then it goes to, like, -3, and then you lose. Like, it feels like it's just constantly -1, -1, -1, and it's like, here's what's happening. Here's Ole Miss spending $10 billion in the transfer portal to bring in high leverage defensive linemen, and they're looking at next year and saying our schedule is the worst in the SEC, and we have an opportunity to go win a national championship next year. So let's dive in. And in Columbus, of all places, it should never ever be like, things are okay. Like, that's okay is not good.
What's amazing is everybody wants a lot of changes and things to happen, but like on the NIL front, it doesn't seem like there's that urgency to maybe get that done.
Well, certainly that's the
you're in tune with that as anybody.
Yeah, that's the problem. You have a fan base that is, and I count myself among them. Like, I don't ever deny that I'm an Ohio State fan. There are a lot of people who have a lot of complaints that can help in some small way and choose not to. But the reality is, you're going to see people attack Ryan Day in the next couple of weeks because players have left, like Noah Rogers and Bryson Rogers. And those same people are going to be mad that.
Why do you think those guys left, by the way?
Because they're being offered a lot of money to go play somewhere else, and because they are looking ahead, and we expect Emeka Buka to return. You have Carnell Tate and Brandon Innes, and now you have Jeremiah Smith and Miley Graham, and maybe it doesn't make a lot of sense to be the 5th or 6th guy. Like, I can understand that, but the people who are saying that's about, they're not rotating receivers enough. That has nothing to do with it. Like, Bryson Rogers, we talked about this on the Daily Show this morning. Bryson Rogers did not come to Ohio State as a kid born and raised in Warren, Ohio, who grew up dreaming of Ohio State. Did not come here under the false pretense that he was going to play as a freshman. He did not. Unequivocally was not told, hey, you're going to be in the rotation. Like, no, he knew that he wasn't going to be. So to leave after 1 year.
Did he go anywhere yet?
No, but I mean, he'll probably end up at Florida. They were the runner-up in his recruitment, and I guess there's.
Oh, because he wants to go down there.
That's where he lived in the last couple of years.
That seems like a great situation this
year.
So,
yeah, Florida's really got it going.
Mm-hmm. Noah Rogers is a kid who, in his recruitment, was always sort of penciled in by people saying he might flip to NC State at any moment, and he was a homebody, and Jeremiah Smith is almost a like-for-like replacement for him, and so. I can understand it, but again, even that player, he was a 5-star type wide receiver, according to some people. Like, you don't come into Ohio, you chose Ohio State because the road was harder at wide receiver. So to then leave after a year by saying, "Oh, the road's harder," like that doesn't add up to me. So it comes down to other schools get a big boost when you say, "Hey, we got one of Ohio State's wide receivers." Okay, like Iowa did with Caleb Brown or Missouri with Mookie Cooper. They can say, "Well, we got one." Like, okay. But bottom line, like, if you spend your entire recruitment saying that I only want to play for one coach, then you can't complain if you don't have a good enough relationship with the rest of the staff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, people loved Urban Meyer for not knowing the names of people who weren't starters, but yet people will hold it against Ryan Day if he's not, like, holding people's hands throughout their entire college career. And, like, I just think people have a wanting it both ways type of problem here, and I think
welcome to society.
So much of it. I swear, and this is why I get frustrated, because I think the belief is that Ryan Day he's not from Ohio after all. He doesn't get it. Like, that's just not true. Like, it's not true, and it doesn't matter to people. So I think people would. Well, Urban Meyer was a dick. Everyone loved him. Like, no, like people hated Urban Meyer. The people,
but he won.
He beat Michigan, and I get it.
He beat some bad Michigan teams in there too. By the way,
this is there are areas of gray in all of these conversations, but I feel like Ryan Day is letting these conversations get to him.
Fester,
and like so, it sort of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy for people, I think, and maybe for him ultimately in his career, but like he has to fix it, and he has to step up and take on the shots and say, hey, this is on me. I'm fixing it. Because if he doesn't, it's going to be him getting fired next December. So, like, what are the options? You can't keep passing the buck. Like, there is no more buck to pass.
I don't think he passes the buck. I just think he holds the buck.
He holds the buck.
Like, the buck stops here, but instead of, like you said, choosing to maybe make some of the changes, he's just taking the arrows as opposed to maybe leaning in of trying to figure out how to solve problems. Do you think there'll be substantive changes made on the coaching staff?
Yes. I mean, there has to be.
Listen, just because there has to be.
Doesn't mean,
there's been a couple years coming. It becomes a matter of self-preservation at this point, and I think that forces you to do things maybe differently or to step outside.
Confrontation breeds change.
Yeah, and you need it right now.
Well, I think the loss actually helps him maybe say, I'm actually going to do this instead of coming off a win where everybody's feeling good or this or that or the other.
We were fortunate to, and you're over there all the time. We have good relationships with these people, and I don't like to say like, oh, time to move on. Like, when you have assistants who've been here for almost 10 years, like, I'm sorry, that's just too long. It's too long to be an assistant coach at a place like Ohio State. Like, bottom line.
Particularly, I mean, if you choose to, and you're continuing to provide value, that would be one thing. But if it's because nobody else will hire the people on your staff, that's what I've said for a month. Are you maximizing every opportunity you have? And people have, latched on to some things that I've said, and others like, well, how are you going to evaluate it that way and not for this? Like, everything is an opportunity for Ohio State to be the very best in the country. Isn't that what the whole standard is supposed to be about?
It is.
If nobody wants to hire your quarterback's coach, and never makes any effort. And that's the most
despite
important.
having 3 straight Heisman finalists.
And that's the most important position on the roster. That's a huge problem. I can't get there. If you decide not to move on from your special teams coordinator after the season, when it would have been very easy with no real risk into the Cotton Bowl, and you say, well, you still get one more month, and then we're going to evaluate things after the season, and it's very clear what that evaluation should be and is going to be, and then you don't hire anybody else or don't let somebody go on the road for a month in a temporary full-time role, and then you commit 4 special teams penalties in the Cotton Bowl. I mean, what are we doing? I cannot fathom. Berm's calling it aggression there. I just think it was common sense. These things, I can understand a justification to get through the month. There's so many things going on with the transfer portal and scholarship numbers and NFL draft decisions and signing day. That's fine. But you have to do things for the good of the program. And
for the group.
And if they're inevitable, then there's no point in delay.
I think, again, I've said it before on this show. Plenty of others. I think there's a ton of revisionist history around the Urban Meyer era.
Of course.
And I think
only the good things. Only remember the good things.
I think that one thing Urban knew how to do was to build a staff until the end, where he decided to hire only his friends, and that was the end of his programs being dominant. Where if you were an assistant for Urban Meyer, you were there for 2 years tops, and you were out the door. And it's either because he burnt you out or because he lifted you up, right?
Well, lifted you up while burning you out. I think
those don't have to be. But the great Urban Meyer coaching run that he had was predicated on having assistant coaches who were willing to butt heads with him, and guys who were not going to be yes men and not going to be just, well, this is Urban's program and we're just going to do whatever. He needed to have opposing voices and people who were willing to stand up to, because he had the at times the focus was a little too tight. And so you needed someone to back out. And I think that the biggest issue that Ohio State had this year, and I talked about it here 2 months ago, the inability or the refusal or the decision to not replace Kevin Wilson with someone like Kevin Wilson was a poor decision.
Yeah.
And it's not a knock on Keenan Bailey. He deserves to be a full-time assistant. He's doing a great job with the tight ends, doing a great job recruiting. But you had to have somebody that Ryan Day trusts and can listen to. And
he's been a head coach.
He's been experience and could tell him, you're wrong in this moment. And I don't think there's anyone in the program right now who has the cachet to do that, and that's a real problem.
Or the experience. There's anyone that has the experience or knowledge or know-how.
If you think about Ryan, he doesn't have that much experience. If you put him against like a Saban or something, he's been coaching for
5 years. Yeah. Eli Drinkowitz on at Thursday's press conference was asked why he decided to give up play calling.
It's remarkable
last year
to watch
this year, and it was you could see the wheel spinning in Ryan Day's head. Like
he looked up to the ceiling, and it was like he was trying to tune it out.
But he knows, he has to do that. And that was the thought a year ago, and then the Georgia game happened, and it was like, ooh, I'm back.
Mm-hmm.
Then everything else that you have to do as the head coach took over again. But on top of that, to make it worse, he also has to be the quarterback's coach and the offensive coordinator and the face of the program for NIL and the guy who's, trying to save last-minute recruitments for 5-star defensive linemen. Like, he has to do all these things.
Well, he doesn't have to do the first few things.
He's had to.
Shouldn't he?
But he chose to. But again, that's the point.
So does he go into this offseason understanding, if I don't change this, I can't be saved?
That's true. I would refer to the great American fighter and ender of the Cold War,
Rocky.
If I can change,
and you can change.
You can change. Everybody can change. Whatever, in some Russian, but
sounds right.
I think that was it.
I think that was.
Schleich does a much better version of it than I do. He can ramble out some nonsense. I think he took a couple of Russian classes at Air Force. All right, so with all of that being said, I know we will take a deeper dive into this later.
Drill down.
There's a lot of offseason.
There's a lot of breadth. There's a lot of depth.
Yeah.
Fun and drama is what we're all about.
Fun and casual.
Is the quarterback on this roster?
The starting quarterback for September? No, I don't believe he is.
So you think there will be some portal diving?
I believe.
No, we're going dumpster diving.
I don't think it's a
Cam
dive.
Ward is gone. DJ
Cam Ward was never.
Did he price himself out of going somewhere to play in college? And they're like, nobody wants to pay me that. I'm going to the NFL.
They floated that like it was nonsense. It was coming from Cam Ward's agent the entire time. Like Ohio State does not want Cam Ward. They never did.
I don't know.
Ohio State offered him $2 million. No, they didn't. They did not want Cam Ward.
So is it Will Howard?
There were 3 quarterbacks from the start that were legitimate options for Ohio State.
Peter's son,
kid from
Dylan.
Duke.
Dylan Gabriel.
Before he went.
Peter Gabriel.
Riley
Leonard. And they couldn't get either of those 2 guys to visit. They
tried.
They had their destinations in mind. Riley Leonard to Notre Dame, Dylan Gabriel to Oregon. And the third one, Berm,
was who we are
talking
about. Will Howard from Kansas State. Now, is it a guaranteed upgrade at the position? I don't think so, especially not like when you compare it to what year 2 of Kyle McCord would have been. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be better than that.
Upgrade over the Cotton Bowl.
It's an upgrade over what we saw in the Cotton Bowl, and I think that in some
ways,
right,
we're good.
I think in some ways, how bad Friday night looked to not Lincoln Kienholz's fault or Devin Brown's
I don't
fault.
blame those guys.
I think it will reinforce the notion for Ryan Day that hey, I've got to at least add another piece to this to compete. Now, of course, a guy like Will Howard, who's won a Big 12 championship, who's got 30 career starts, is not coming to Ohio State with the pretense that he's going to be in a quarterback competition.
You're going to have to tell him that he's going to be the starter for next year, bro?
You're going to have to tell him that he is going to have every opportunity to just walk in and have it be his job. Now, does that mean he guaranteed to keep it?
There should be no guarantees.
At that point, absolutely not.
Maybe you get the first reps, but if somebody outplays you, sorry.
That's the way it goes. That's real life.
I think it's a reasonable approach. This is a kid who's won a lot of football games. He's been playing with less talent around him. The question is, how much better is he than what you have? And and no one really knows, but I think that it was clear from December 2nd when he entered the portal, that was one of the names that we were constantly hearing. And whether or not that happens this week, whether or not it happens at all, we believe it will, but it's going to just add to the next set of challenges and the next question, because then boats get unburned and other stuff like that.
Can't unburn those
That's
boats.
how that works.
They sink to the bottom.
I'm saying I hope that I hope Devin Brown says, you know what, screw it. I'm still staying. I'm still fighting. Like, that's what I want a football program to be. Like, I get it. It sucks, but you can't have loyalty as a coach anymore. These players don't have loyalty to you. So,
Jay-Z, the point that you made there, I think, is interesting. We're talking about, because this conversation will now be about Will Howard versus Kyle McCord, not necessarily Devin Brown, at least in my mind. You could have said the same thing to Kyle McCord a month ago and said, well, other guys are going to have a chance to compete.
That's what I just don't understand.
I imagine that they did say
if the dad comes in and says, we want guaranteed, well, you say to the dad who played college football, correct?
Yes.
There's no guarantees in football. You will get our first reps in spring ball. Mm-hmm. You see how that goes. Mm-hmm. If it goes good, you're going to get first reps in fall ball. If somebody's playing better than you, that's just the way of the world. We're going to replace you. I don't understand how he walked out of a meeting with them and apparently pissed them off so much, or made them feel as if, all right, we're going through this battle all over again. We're getting 50% of the first team reps. And they know how bad the starting offensive line is. You're not getting any reps with this. They knew all that and they'd been through it already. I don't know how you
because you
get to this point where you're adding a Will Howard, not
you
even
don't want to go through it again. I mean, the answer, I would be almost willing to bet a number of units that is how the conversation went, which was to say, you've done.
If that's the case, I don't know why he leaves then, because even at Syracuse, if he gets outplayed by somebody, they're going to play that.
He's not going to get outplayed by anybody at Syracuse.
He shouldn't.
All right. Well, we're going to have a lot more time to talk about that next week.
Do you think that'll be a topic next week?
Yeah, in show number 2 of 2024. We are going to call it for this one because I think we could go for about 6 more hours, but we shouldn't. We're going to move on from the Cotton Bowl and the rest of everything else that's coming in this offseason.
Well, we're going to relive the Cotton Bowl
every week.
It's in my nightmares. It's been fun to get back into the Horseshoe Lounge at Roosters. Thanks to Nicole Cox for having us. Thanks to Justin Zwick, Bobby Carpenter, Jeremy Birmingham. I'm Austin Ward. Happy New Year to you all. We'll see you next Monday.
Bama's not really the 5th best team in the SEC. I don't know why I said that.